Welcome, everyone. I am John Ryan for the Predictive Playbook and the predictiveplaybook.com, and I am pleased to have two outstanding guests with me today, starting with Rudy Reyes, founder of the Rude Dog Show. He is also on the air in iHeart Radio doing Southern California news just about every single afternoon. The guy is a working machine, and he's got a lot of other things going on too, but most of all, he has a great NFL and college football mind, and that's why he's on this show. And the same can be said for Barry Long. He was the host of the Major League Baseball Spaces show, which I believe was one of the top-rated shows out there in Spaces, which is the new thing in X. I'm getting used to saying that, guys. Like
I'm still not used to saying it. It's kind of like Staples Center. Staples Center will always be Staples Center to me. I'm not used to saying the crypto.com arena. Like, I hate that. It's Staples to me. But that's the way I feel about Twitter. Like, it's Twitter. It's X, formerly known as Twitter, right?
It's Twitter with a splash of lime. If you're into that,
without the bird.
I think Prince, the artist, started that. I think a long time ago, yes. Formerly known as,
Look at you, John Ryan. John Ryan. I must point out
that you so many things. Ex-girlfriend, ex-husband, All
right, well, speaking of ex-girlfriends, ex-husbands, is your ex-baseball team the Dodgers?
No, I've always liked the Dodgers, and I thought I'd wear the hat today in honor of you guys being Southern California boys. So,
We appreciate that. We appreciate that. I know Rudy does.
Well,
too.
I'm a Kershaw disciple.
I think Anaheim appreciates Washington more so now than they probably ever have before, coming over from Atlanta as the third base coach. So congratulations to the Angels for getting a guy of that stature who's a complete player's coach. So good for them.
Absolutely. Well, there is some news building this week, and there's going to be some rumbling in Pennsylvania, basically in the middle of the state where Happy Valley's located, when the number 2 Michigan Wolverines finally do play a valid opponent, in my humble opinion, with the Penn State Nittany Lions. Quarterback Drew Lores, sophomore, has thrown just one interception on the season. He has a cannon of an arm. He has all kinds of weapons on the perimeter. He also has Singletary and Catron, who both were the first Big Ten freshmen to gain 700 yards each. And Singleton is the first, he's the third player in Penn State history as a freshman to gain over 1,000 yards. DJ Dozier in 1983 was the first one to ever do it. And then some guy that plays for the Giants named Saquon Barkley was the second one. So he's in pretty good company there, in my opinion. And there is rumor that the Michigan flight takes off at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time to go to Happy Valley. There is rumor, and I emphasize the word rumor, that possibly Harbaugh will be suspended while they're in flight.
Suspended while he's in the plane?
They're talking they're going to suspend him mid-flight. They're going to suspend him mid-flight. And they're going to suspend him potentially for 3 games. That puts them in a very tough position, because that third game is the Ohio State game, and that's the real game that really matters to Michigan fans and to Ohio State fans. And it is going to be a terrible thing if he can't coach. And I understand that sign stealing and knowing the plays before the play pre-snap is definitely a problematic thing, but ultimately I just feel 3 games. I mean, this is something, it's kind of like baseball sign stealing, in my opinion, is because it goes on in every single aspect, every single level of football. Even in Pop Warner, we're always looking for an advantage. And the thing about it is that Jim Harbaugh, I feel like he's been unfairly targeted in a lot of different scenarios that he's been involved in. I mean, I forget which coach it was. I think it was Steve Spagnuolo, or I forget which coach it was, where they had at the midfield after the game, where the coaches had that exchange where they shake hands. It was just an awkward exchange. I forget which coach it was, but Jim Harbaugh was the guy that got blamed and they made look bad. And he's always that guy, in my opinion. And I understand that this is something that they need to nip in the bud. But ultimately, I feel like this is strategic from college football, and I don't like it one bit, because it feels like Michigan is not getting a fair shake at this point. How do you guys feel about that?
There's a lot of things I do like about the Wolverines, and the sign stealing is not one of them. Yeah, you can go retroactive. You can look at it historically from that point of view and say, you know what? It's happened before. Everybody does it. There are so many different aspects to why sign stealing has become a thing now. And I believe honestly that when you look at this particular program, they've done great things on the field. Let's make no mistake about that. It's just something that Michigan has this year they haven't had. And I'm not talking about just play, but it's about the camaraderie. And regardless of whether or not Harbaugh gets suspended in flight with no water and no free movies, he's going to have at least a few games to kind of wonder what happened and do his own, minor investigative research as to how this sign stealer now became the most, I don't know, I'd rather say infamous component in this entire, scandal. I mean, there are screenshots, there are text message exchanges from staffers, a handful of them around the Big Ten football system that would kind of make you believe that this is a lot more heinous than just stealing a sign. And I don't mean an actual like cross the street sign or a stop sign or a translucent sign at a 4-stop way. So there's certainly a lot to this. They are 9-0. They're ranked number 2 for good reason. Obviously, not a lot of teams are in the position that Michigan is in from a football program perspective. But overall, I just think that there's a lot more than meets the eye here in this entire scandal.
I think so too, and I think it.
But John,
don't you
feel like?
I didn't hear that part. I think it piggybacks off of what happened earlier in the year with him with the recruiting violations. And you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar doing that, and they suspended him for 3 ridiculous games against those teams. With all due respect, there's parents in the stands watching their sons play at Bowling Green and those other colleges. But when you're ranked in the top 10, those games are mismatches where the 3 of us could manage that team to a victory. Now, all of a sudden, the stealing of the signs and what the depth is, like Rudy said, we don't really know. I sense that there is more to this story than what is being told. And if the commissioner, who has the authority to suspend any coach under the Sports Conduct and Review Committee in the Big Ten for 2 games, if it's 3 games, there's actually another committee in the Big Ten that has to approve that. So if they do 3 games, it's going to make me think that they've already got approval from both committees to do this. And I would think the statement that if he goes 3 games, let's say, and he lands and he finds this out, then there's more to this story than what we know and been told. There's no doubt in my mind, because the commissioner would not suspend him for 3 games and without knowing or having the chance that the other committee would overrule him and then postpone any suspension. That wouldn't make any sense at all to me. But at the end of the day, if Michigan players and the coaching staff that remains can't find a way to win these last 3 games and then get into the college football playoff, I don't think Harbaugh makes the difference. Think about this. If you're 18 to 22 years of age and your head coach, who you worship because you went there on a full scholarship because you believed in the guy, gets suspended and you think it's wrong, you are going to be one motivated, beast on that football field.
Yeah.
So it could work.
And the thing is you got to coach him up, and you coach him up throughout the preseason, throughout the season. And ultimately, if the coach gets ejected from a game, right, then the interim coach steps up, the assistant coach steps up in any sport, even in baseball. But the thing about it is that when you look at football coaches, do you guys believe that they have that big of an impact on the overall outcome of the game?
I don't think so.
As opposed to baseball and basketball coaches.
No.
You don't think so?
No.
Because there's so many position skills coaches, and then there's so many different aspects to the game where the head coach is kind of like the overall manager of everything. But there's guys that know what they're doing, and there's always guys on every football staff that are qualified or that are on their way up to becoming qualified to be head coaches. So yeah, you make a great point, John Ryan. It should not affect really the game unless it affects it in a positive way for Michigan, because they want to ball out for their coach. But I just feel like it's always something with Harbaugh, and it just feels like he's a guy that just has a target on his back, and he just cannot seem to overcome it. And the thing about it is like, give him 2 games, in my opinion. Give him 2 games. I understand the logistics of it, but you cannot suspend him for the Ohio State game. Like, that is blasphemous, in my opinion.
Well, the entire problem is this, is that you suspend, okay, if you want to suspend someone, suspend the staffers involved in allowing whoever this guy was to come in and look at signs to begin with, be able to look or become incorporated within the program at whatever length, whether he's in the audience, whether he's in the coaching room, whether he's in pre-game meetings or anything of that nature. I mean, this obviously has spiraled out of control. And yes, they're going to see even more violation, a lot more violations rather in the following season with the NCAA to say, you know what, we're not going to have this, and you're going to have, picks taken away as if you're in the NFL. You get draft picks taken away because of your lackluster situations within the program itself. So I see Michigan getting penalized heavily, not only monetarily, but with the suspension. And that's really where it starts, because if you're a head coach, and you can blame this on any head coach you want in the National Football League or in the NCAA, Division I, Division II, it doesn't matter. NBA, Major League Baseball, we see managers become the fall guys in a blink of an eye. And it's not going to go away anytime soon.
Okay, so you guys remember when the Houston Astros had the whole trash can thing, right? Remember the fallout that came after that, because Joey was a part of it. So then he lost his job with the Boston Red Sox and then ultimately got it back. But at the same time, it felt like if they're doing it and those 2 teams are doing it, then every team is doing it. Don't you think that Alabama has a sign stealer somewhere lurking around in the stand somewhere? I mean, if Jim Harbaugh is doing it.
I've been saying this on a couple of shows this week. It's like you're on I-95 here in the East Coast, or what's the interstate out there in California that is 8 lanes wide?
I mean,
but anyway, it's like the speed limit's 70 here in the East, and the 3 of us are driving at 80 miles an hour, which is the normal speed. But then all of a sudden, Jim Harbaugh is coming up behind us at 130 miles an hour, and he stands out. And you go, oh, my God, look at that guy. That guy's nuts. He's going 130 miles an hour on an interstate highway. But I think that's why he has that target, there are things that happen. Maybe he had no knowledge of this, but your head coach, it's like the president of the United States. You're the last resort. You're the last buck. You have to be accountable for it. And if one of your assistants screwed up and embarrassed you in your program, you still have to stand up and say, I'm accountable. It's my fault. And, the suspensions are warranted.
Well, true. And look at Jim Harbaugh, his brother, head coach for the Baltimore Ravens.
They're kind of different, aren't they?
They're very different. They're different mindset, attitudes, the way they approach the game, their coaching style, the mentality. You don't ever hear about him becoming part of an NFL investigation. You never hear anything about the Ravens in regards to, other than maybe some dirty play historically, but that's up to the players, and the head coach wouldn't have anything to do with that other than to keep them on an even keeled platform to save it from getting out of control, maybe a bounty gate. We've seen that with the New Orleans Saints just a few years ago. So it's almost as if he's taken a page out of his own playbook and playing by the rules. And I think his brother would be more than helped out, I should say, to have that conversation with him, to say, look, this is how you stay out of trouble. This is how you keep your head above water. This is how you not get suspended. And unfortunately, it falls with the head coach. And in this instance, if Harbaugh gets suspended mid-flight, he better have a parachute, because it's going to be a tumultuous way down, especially on his way through some pigeons and birds and other anomalies in the sky that he's going to hit on his way down, especially if he gets suspended for that Ohio State game.
All right, gun to your head, both of you guys, real quick. Gun to your head. Do you think he survives this and he keeps his job moving forward, or you think he gets fired?
Yes, I do. I do, because he's done so much more for that program than any prior coach within the last 10 to 15 years, leading them. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
Bo was
I
Really,
can't
he was
think of
against him.
anyone else within the Michigan program that's enabled them to get to this point time and time and time again, regardless of recruiting suspensions or recruit issues or anything related to the following seasons. You know, it's almost like a rollover IRA. You know, you can roll over to the following year and still have similar problems and issues because you're locked in. And I think they're going to lock in Harbaugh, despite the transgressions that have basically, I don't know, I want to say cursed him up to this point, especially the NCAA. Could he see his way back into the NFL? Maybe, if a team is desperate enough or that position becomes available. We know there are a few coaches in the NFL that are on a hot seat right now.
Brandon Staley.
Staley could very well be one of those guys as well. But I believe the organization believes in him, and they believe in Justin Herbert. And I think that, you know, Staley and Herbert are just those kind of guys that aren't going to go anywhere anytime soon. I just have a strong belief that when you have a solid franchise or a solid NCAA, you know, school that highlights football over any other program there, you're going to tend to want to keep the confluency of head coaches because you don't want the carousel to come back and bite you.
especially
Yeah,
for
that's what's been
recruiting.
happening to the Cleveland Browns, right? I mean, the Cleveland Browns, the same with the Raiders, the same thing, right? Right, John Ryan?
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I think at the college level, it's all about recruiting. So if you have a solid, consistent coaching staff that parents know and the player knows are going to be there for the foreseeable future, at least their 4 years or 2 years, whatever it is, then that helps. That definitely helps. Well, here's one angle. We'll just quickly end the Penn State-Michigan game, but Penn State is in a 70% situation going into tomorrow at noon. And that's a totally different subject. And it just has me upset. Why in the world is this game at noon? I mean, does somebody have somewhere to go? I mean, come on.
But they'll flex Colorado to the primetime game, even though they got a lot of losses on their record. But yeah, this game is too early in my opinion as well.
Straight up situation is 32-30. We're going to bet on a matchup of teams that have won at least 85% of their games on the season, which both of these qualify. And the opponent has covered the spread by 49 or more points in their last 5 games. So that means that Michigan has played extraordinarily well and also covered the spread against some pretty big numbers. They're prone to regression, these teams. So that is the real dominant force here that I think is going to be in play. And you have 112,000 people tomorrow, whether it's at noon or 8 o'clock at night, that are going to be very, very loud. If you haven't been to Happy Valley for a major game, I was at the Michigan game 4 years ago. And you can be sitting next to your son, your wife, whatever. And when the opposing team gets down that student section on the one end of the field, you can't hear yourself even think or even say anything to your neighbor. It is unbelievably loud. So, Harbaugh was there. And, the whole crowd was waiting for him to throw his clipboard, and then he finally did. That was the year that Saquon had the big game. So I think that history repeats here again. And now, lastly, I'll say this to you guys. Penn State can be in the Big Ten championship game if they win this game. Ohio State has to go to Michigan. That's no ticket either because Michigan has a bigger stadium even than Penn State. And I think, Michigan would clearly be favored. This system I just mentioned to you supports Ohio State against the spread. But I think, if Michigan wins that game and Penn State wins tomorrow, it goes down to the 5th tiebreaker, which is cumulative record of opponents in the West Division. We forget sometimes that these 3 teams are not just in the Big Ten. They're in the same division, and they're in the top 10. So it has to be sorted out, but that would give Penn State the tiebreaker, unless something crazy happens in the last 3 weeks among that West Division set of teams.
I don't see it.
Yeah, that's where this whole conference realignment thing, it convolutes the entire scenario because, honestly, you're like Big 12. Big 12. How many teams in the Big 12? How many teams are in the Pac-12? I mean, it's just ridiculous. I think that eventually they need to come to some kind of agreement overall that we have a Western Conference and an Eastern Conference, much like the professional sports run. Because I mean, there's a lot of people getting paid under the table, and the athletes are the ones that are putting out the product, but they're not getting as much benefit. Don't give me the NA crab and all this other, like all these other deals that they're getting. Man, there's people making millions of dollars off of these games.
Oh, yeah.
And the
There's
players
no doubt about that.
Well, I mean,
My
the
pick is,
NIL.
Penn State.
I'm sorry, John.
No, that's all right. My pick is Penn State plus 4.5. What do you guys think?
Oh, man. I'm not a betting guy. That's going to be tough for me to call.
I'm going to take Penn State.
Or who wins the game?
Michigan.
Okay.
You think Michigan wins? You think they play inspired ball?
Absolutely. Why not?
But they're going to have to believe
for the coach. They're going to have to. Yeah. They're going to have to bring their A game. You're going to have the most stellar quarterback play that Harbaugh's probably ever seen without him actually being there at the game on the sideline.
Yeah. and the thing about it is that he's a quarterback. Like he was pinned as a quarterback guru because he had Andrew Luck in college. And that's kind of the reason why he ended up getting to San Francisco. But then he also was a quarterback guru because of what he was able to do with Alex Smith along with Colin Kaepernick. And the thing is that there's a sense of stability that he provides on the sidelines to that quarterback. When you look over at head coach, I mean, it's the same way with all head coaches, but like Sean McVay has a glare, a gaze that he'll just look at you and be like, he'll look at Matt Stafford, and Matt Stafford doesn't even want to walk in his direction because he's like, yo, I messed up, and I got you, coach. And Harbaugh, he's a great football coach, a great football mind, a great quarterbacks coach, but I just feel like he's always being targeted unfairly, and for some reason they just don't want him to beat Ohio State, and they're trying their best to keep him out of it. And I hope that it's not 3 games. But shout out to Florida State because Florida State has been impressive, and it's nostalgic for me to see Florida State in the top 3. Because I grew up in the 90s and they had Charlie Ward, Peter Warwick Dunn. I mean, it was special. I mean, and you go back to Deion Sanders, and I mean, Florida State has a rich history and a rich tradition that just has fallen off for a few years, but now they're back. And it feels like they're going to sustain it. Do you guys think that they end up in the college football playoff?
Well, the problem that I have with Florida State is that they nowhere near were consistent against Pitt. And Pitt at 2-5, that says a lot about what Pitt was able to do. So you take a page of that out of that book on any team moving forward, the remainder of their schedule, and it's going to be an uphill battle if you execute that in the way that Penn State did. It's overload the front and be careful in the back, play man, or play zone if you need to, blitz the passer because he doesn't like being blitzed. So Florida State almost did not hold their own in this particular matchup, especially in the first half against Pitt. So I really suspect they're going to have their hands full this weekend. But I think somehow they find a way around this and win out for the remainder of their schedule. But again, that's all about play at the line. It's about a lot of solid pancake blocks, A-gaps that are open, quarterback play, execution, following your reads and your progressions. If you don't do any of that, you're done. You're done. And Florida State could be a one and done if they happen to lose this next game.
Yeah, they might not be in either. Even if they win the ACC, they might not get the nod. And that would be a shame.
Vote.
Yeah, I mean, it really would be a shame. Let's go over to the NFL now. We were talking about coaches on the hot seat, and we've been hearing this week that if the Patriots don't win in Frankfurt, Germany, that there's going to be a guy that's unemployed named Bill Belichick, which I think would be the most disgusting move any owner could ever do. I mean, let's see, he's gone to 9 Super Bowls and won 6 of them. So you're going to fire the guy in season with technically less than half the season left.
And let's
I don't know if I believe these rumors, but
he was a DC of those Giants teams that won back in the day.
Yeah.
Bill Parcells. So I mean, he's. But the thing is that, of course, it's blasphemous. You cannot fire Bill Belichick. I mean, the only thing that they could do is make him gracefully resign, right? Like some other guys that that they get forced to resign. But I mean, he'll be unemployed. I forget. I think it was Rob Ryan, Rex Ryan's brother, who got fired a few years back, and then his quote to the media was, "I'll be unemployed for like 5 minutes." And that literally, Bill Belichick he'll be unemployed for 30 seconds and then be re-employed in the next 30 seconds, and then he'll have his choices at teams to go to. I mean, there's teams in the NFL that are happy with their head coaching, and they would fire their head coach if Bill Belichick was on the block. And
like the Giants, for example.
Oh my goodness.
What if there was a trade? What if there was a trade on Sunday afternoon that Belichick's going to go to the Giants for 3 number 1 picks?
And Daniel Jones.
I'm just saying, I don't think it's going to happen, but
we've seen coaches get traded.
Bill Belichick has been a staple. No, Bill Belichick has been a staple for the Patriots franchise. There is no midseason firings from the New England Patriots side. That's absolute hyperbole.
Yeah, it's a rich organization, but
it would be the worst
dumpster fire though, Rudy,
since Babe Ruth in Boston.
Yeah, you're right.
If they do it, they deserve to have the Bill Belichick curse. Then,
yes,
yeah,
maybe that's what they're aiming for here. But
I just don't see it. But to be honest with you, when you look at the Patriots, they're hosting, so they are the home team in Frankfurt, Germany. It's the Indianapolis Colts, who are close to 500. Oddly enough, they did that last week against the Carolina Panthers. We've seen Carolina lose last night. And it's funny enough, the Holloman Award winner, whatever that is, Division II best player there is, against a Heisman Trophy winner. Look, I understand Bryce Young doesn't have all the weapons. I get it. But when you get out executed by a fourth string quarterback, fourth, we're talking about on a guitar, a fourth string
put
quarterback.
Put on Tyson Bage's name. All right, but go ahead.
No, hey, Tyson Bagent deserves all the cred all day because of what he's done while he's been elected to be that guy under center. I'm not a fan of Justin Fields, never have been, never will be. Maybe that could be due to the part that they threw him into that position, but that's another story for another time. But what ends up happening is the Colts were happy to oblige Bryce Young on another pick six by Moore, basically 2 pick sixes in that game against Carolina. Look, we all know NFL Europe. We know that the NFL reign, the German version of an NFL team enjoys, singing John Denver songs, and they like to drink beer and
goblets of it, apparently.
But what really helped the Colts was, and I'm not going to say it was Minshew, but it was Minshew. Could you see another magical? You see some Minshew magic in Frankfurt? Maybe if you're talking about a hot dog. Look, maybe so. In the week, he threw for 127 yards, almost 5 yards per pass. He had a decent QBR at almost 90. No interceptions, no zero zilch nada. He read the defenses perfectly. He took what the defense gave them. That's exactly what he did. Sometimes you have to work the sidelines, middle of the field for minimal gains, dink and dunk. I think that you're not going to dink and dunk a donut inside of your beer. But then again, I've heard of worse things like mayo in your coffee. But they happen to do this without Richardson. That actually says a lot about Minshew. It says a lot about what the coaching staff believes in Minshew. But to suggest that Jonathan Taylor's gotten back to regular season form or even a preseason look of what he looked like last year, that's a far cry. He had 5 receptions, 22 yards, and only 1 touchdown. But look, a win is a win, at the end of the day. I'm not going to say that the Patriots defense did it all last week against the Commanders, but they kind of did hold them in check if you think about it. I mean, look, you pick off Sam Howell, in the end zone. It just made him look like he was under a microscope the entire game. And he had a modest 84, QBR, which is fine. But one thing about the Patriots, and I know this and I've seen this time and time again, staple defense and blitz packages up front, in the middle, early and often. And of course, they ended up with 3 sacks, 6 QB hits. And Stevenson was relatively productive on the offensive side of the ball with 9 attempts, almost 90 yards, averaging about 10 yards per catch. And he ended up with a touchdown. So a lot to be said for New England and what they could do defensively. I just think that the Colts run the table here and end up winning this game in Frankfurt. And somebody, you know what? Hold my beer because it's Minshew time.
Or as I refer to him as Gardner Women's Shoe. Because it's not a men's shoe, it's a women's shoe. But that's just me throwing shade to him. I'm hating on him because I'm a Ravens fan, and I hate the Colts because that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But ultimately, the Colts have been a team that has had a decent team around them, and they've been looking for a quarterback. I mean, and Jonathan Taylor, it's kind of that running back holdout curse, right? We saw the same thing with your team with Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell had this whole concept that he was the Steph Curry of running backs, and that because he did a little patient pause and a little hezzy before he hit the hole, that he was changing and doing something that we've never seen before. And he holds out because he was productive as heck that season before. But he holds out, does the same thing Melvin Ingram does. And we've seen running back after running back, this happens to them. And they hold out, then they finally get their money, or they don't get their money. And then they're never the same. And Jonathan Taylor, albeit a short holdout, I just feel like with the way that the running back landscape is for the market that they can acquire and the money that, I mean, there are running backs that are making less than punters and kickers in the league right now. And running backs get tackled the most out of anybody on the football field, okay? And then they have to block when they're not getting tackled. And it's one of those things where it's a dangerous position. But, you know, the running backs, they hold out because they want their money. But it seems like a curse. When you hold out, it seems like I cannot think of, off the top of my head, maybe one or two guys that have actually lived up to that contract that they held out for. And it's more guys that haven't lived up to it than have.
No, you're definitely right. And the problem with that is that if you're a running back or any other main primary position, defense or offense, it doesn't really matter. I mean, special teams, it is what it is. But what ends up happening is you lose the camaraderie, you lose the familiarity with the offensive play calling. I think that's the case with Jonathan Taylor actually holding out until very recently, where he was active. He was put on IR and then he comes back and it gets worked into the offense. We're seeing the squeaky wheels that just need to be greased more. And I think there's a lot more plays that can be had involving Jonathan Taylor that would enable him to get back into fluid motion. I think that says a lot for the organization, you know, extending that offer towards him and for him. But at this particular point in the season, any win is a win. No, he's not going to lead the league in rushing again, so that would be an absolute garbage statement. But what he's going to do is based on familiarity and usage and offensive packages will allow for him to get back to some type of a form within the offensive structure.
Yeah, I agree.
That's good stuff.
That division is wide open too. I mean, Jacksonville, they look vulnerable, and the rest of that division is a dumpster fire. So if there is an opportunity, I mean, look at the Texans, what they're doing with CJ Stroud. I mean, they've been impressive. They could win this division ultimately. I mean, anybody could win this division in my opinion. But yeah, I definitely agree that Jonathan Taylor is not the same. And I honestly, this might be a bold take, but I don't think that we'll ever see the Jonathan Taylor that we saw from the previous seasons.
I would agree with that. And speaking of Jacksonville, they have a date coming here off the bye week against the 49ers, who are going to be, I think, quite focused, being on a 3-game losing streak after winning their first 5. And if I had to pick a blowout winner on the card for this week, I think the 49ers are going to destroy Jacksonville this week. And that doesn't mean that Jacksonville's a bad team. They've won 5 in a row. They've gotten their act together. They were the fan favorite, if you will, the Vegas favorite preseason to possibly dethrone the Chiefs. So it's not to say that one loss is going to wreck their season, but with everything on the line, the 49ers cannot afford to go to 5-4 because Seattle's playing much better than advertised. They're 5-3, as are the 49ers, and they just would not have a chance to get to the Super Bowl, not having that home field advantage that now the Eagles somehow control, despite the fact that they get outgained in more games than I think I've ever seen an 8-win and 1-loss team ever do, Pittsburgh, of course, has been outgained in every single game they've played this year. But I guess, Tomlin finds a way to win.
They find a way to win. They
don't remind me. Please do not remind me.
They end up winning. That's why they're 5-3. It's not as if Kenny Pickett's blowing out the doors right now. Okay, let's just be honest with you. I had a coach formerly of the Colorado Buffaloes. You can go to the RudDogShow.com and check that interview out. It's very, very cool. But Coach Sanford was very honest and candid when he said that Kenny Pickett, he does just not believe that he is an NFL quality quarterback. And that's the first person that I've spoken to that has said that. And to be honest with you, he didn't show that. He showed that he doesn't belong on that roster. He showed that, he's, I don't know, something about Pickett to Pickens and Pickens receiving from Pickett that just kind of, I don't know, just brings out the magic in him. And they have no offensive identity. I'm not going to kid myself, and nor should any other Steelers fan. But, at the end of the day, it's really about how you execute and when you execute. And if you can even execute at all being under center, the offensive unit, for at least the O-linemen, have been on display with mixed messages and mixed personnel. We've seen this throughout the NFL landscape that, patchwork sometimes pays off dividends. We've seen New York, the Jets, out of all teams, put together more offensive linemen combinations than anyone this season, and yet still find a way to lose the game because of quarterback play. Not offensive line play, quarterback play. Go figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's I'm going to finish up the show here with one final question. I think it'll be fun. Hopefully you guys will think it'll be fun. Okay. And it does focus on the Philadelphia Eagles. And they've had a medium tough schedule to date. Coming off they're on the bye week this week. They're coming off the win. Again, that was pretty shaky win against the Dallas Cowboys, where they were outgained by a lot. And now the schedule gets very tough. They have the Chiefs. They have Buffalo. They have 5 games in a row now that are against playoff contending teams, if not Super Bowl contending teams. What do you think the Eagles will do record-wise over this 5-game stretch? I think they go 2-3. I don't see how in the world they're going to be able to go week after week after week in a gauntlet like this and somehow end up, 4-1. If they do, hey, they're the best team in the NFL, and we might as well give them the Super Bowl ring now. But I just think they have the target on their back. They are the 8-1 team, and every time they play somebody now, they're going to bring the load. So what do you guys think with that? I think they go 2-3 at best.
I'll be real quick and then I'll let Rudy go. I'm going 3-2. And best case scenario, I say 4-1, and I'm leaning more towards 4-1 because the way that the Eagles have been winning these games it's been ugly. I mean, last season they were dominating up front on that defense, and even on the back end they were good. And they started out the season banged up, and I picked the defense for my fantasy football defense because they were so good last season, and they have just been letting me down. But Jalen Hurts always finds a way to win the games, and they just and when you see what AJ Brown's been doing, I mean, historically one of the best receivers throughout the course of this season, and it's incredible to see a team that can win through adversity in the ways that they've won these 8 games. So I honestly think that it is going to be problematic moving forward, especially when they get to the playoffs, the defense. But for now, I mean, I like them winning these close games. And what they did last week against Dallas, the defense stepped up, when it mattered the most. And I feel like this team is tougher and more mentally focused and more and more. They have the ability to overcome adversity more than we give them credit for. What do you say, Rudy?
They have a very daunting task. You're right, John. They're going to face off against the team they faced off in the Super Bowl, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 11. So that's going to be
one they'll
tough.
Lose. That's the one.
And that could very well be the one they lose. The problem with that is that the Kansas City Chiefs have not been playing anywhere near as good ball at this time last year, headed into the Super Bowl. So it's anyone's game at this point, but I think the Eagles will end up getting the dub in this, maybe by a tush push and a half. So we'll see how that actually works. Week 12 against the Bills, who are hungry to get things back on track. They want to go to the Super Bowl. It's a Super Bowl or bust year for the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen under center. It's going to be tough against the 49ers, especially if Brock Purdy's on his A game within the next couple of weeks and get back on track with some key injuries between Ayuk coming back from IR, Deebo Samuel's obviously in the mix, and we'll start this Sunday. Brock Purdy just needs to snap out of it so he can throw some pretty good balls down the field to really keep that Eagles defense honest. Obviously use that pressure and take what the defense gives them. And I think really that's a difference in the game, and it could be just a 7-point swing there. Eagles against the Cowboys. Cowboys are still, again, reeling off that last loss, which was, oh my gosh, it was look, Dak Prescott probably played the best game in a losing battle in his career, to be perfectly honest with you.
I
so
agree.
A lot of things I like from Dak Prescott. So I think the Eagles will get the dub, but it's going to be a 3-point off of Mayer's toe, to be honest. And then the Seahawks are no chumps either. You know, I'm not a fan of Geno Smith. Quarterback play for them has been spotchy at best. But I think the Eagles certainly could get the win there, especially if it's at home. If it is, then you got the home team who obviously the Boo Birds come out every chance they get. So I think Seattle does that. So I mean, ultimately, I really think that the Eagles can win out in the remaining schedule, despite a trap game on Christmas Day against the New York Football Giants and the lack of Daniel Jones, who is out actually for the remainder of the season. Who will see DeVito as a starting quarterback coming this Sunday.
Not Danny.
Not Danny. He's much taller, much more hair, and probably doesn't eat a whole lot of Subway sandwiches. But I think I think the Eagles have a really good chance of going maybe 5-1 starting, moving forward in their latter part of the remaining schedule.
I think I'll temper my disbelief tad after hearing you guys. Maybe they do go 3-2. They're going to be right now. The Circa has put out betting lines that started before the season even began for every single game on the board, and the Eagles right now are a 3.5-point dog at Kansas City. Then they're only a 2-point favorite at home versus the Bills, 3-point favorite at home versus the 49ers. Then pick them on the road against the Cowboys, and then only a -2-point favorite on the road against the Seahawks. So it's going to be a lot of smash mouth football for 5 weeks in a row, and then they come home and play the Giants.
That's the way Jalen Hurts likes it. So,
Yeah, but his knee is what I question. His ability to scramble out of the pocket without well-designed, plays for him to get the max protection. And we've seen that happen with guys that have knee injuries. They create offensive plays to protect quarterbacks even further. You're not going to see him run out of the pocket unless it's a scamper for 5 yards or maybe a first down, depending on field position.
It could impact the tush push too.
Yeah,
they may not want him doing it.
Brown under center instead.
They'll be like, go with that left cheek, not the right cheek.
Somebody hold the glute. No, not that one.
The tush push. Man, I love that. I love that terminology.
That should be illegal in the NFL anyway, but what do I know?
For sure. Before I let you guys go, I want you to give yourself a shout out for some of the work that you're doing. Anything you want to bring attention of the audience to, so that they can take advantage of the shows that you guys do, other than this one, or the work, whatever you want to say is fine. Let's start with Barry, and then we'll end with the Mad Dog, Rudy, the Rude Dog.
Mad Dog.
For the conclusion, and then I'll sign off.
Already taken.
All right, so you guys can follow me on IG and Twitter or X at Barry Long II, and you can follow me on Facebook at Barry Long II as well. And I do the 5150 Sports Show on Twitter, and the Only Baseball with Pointsville Fridays. We'll have a show next week, and we'll have two special guests. So I'm excited. We have a major leaguer and a minor leaguer that's going to be joining the show next week. So make sure you guys tap in with that.
Major, and never forget the minor. Speaking of minor, I'm not a minor. My name's Rudy Reyes. You can find me at Rude Dog Reyes on Twitter. Go to at Rude Dog Reyes there. You can go to the RudeDogShow.com. 9 years worth of of greatness. I do work for iHeart Radio, as John mentioned in the opening part of this broadcast. I do cover news, so that's what I talk about on Seattle 1090, The Patriot, as well as California Regional News as well. You can find me on KVTA 1090 in Ventura, California, and then also at Sirius XM as a play-by-play board operator. So thanks, John. I appreciate it. Great stuff. If you guys have any questions, feel free to follow up, email me, follow me on Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn and every other possible website known to mankind.
Well, everybody knows where to follow me, predictiveplaybook.com, and the Twitter is obvious. It's right there in front of you. So, I got to say, go Penn State before we sign off. And if you do bet, I end every single show like this. And it's so important to me that you understand that betting is dangerous stuff. It's supposed to be fun. If you've made a bet and you start sweating and you start thinking about the mortgage payment that might not happen because you bet that bet, then you definitely have bet too much. So remember to bet with your head, not over it, and may all the wins be yours.